Good morning. Thank you for everyone being with us here today to launch the third Falak Unreasonable Thinking Summit. And thank you all for making this happen and for being part of it. Allow me to introduce the curator of Falak Unreasonable Thinking Summit and the founder of Falak Consulting, Mr. Suhail Algosaibi.
Thank you. All progress depends on the unreasonable person. These words were uttered by George Bernard Shaw over 100 years ago. He said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in adapting the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man," or today, of course, we would say the unreasonable person. But who did he mean? What is the unreasonable person? This is one of my favorite quotes. And in my view, the unreasonable person, or the unreasonable man, as he said it, is the change maker. A person who works actively to effect positive social change. A person who works actively to effect positive change. People like inventors, entrepreneurs, activists, politicians, scientists, revolutionaries, social entrepreneurs, even athletes, business leaders, innovators of various kinds, civil servants oftentimes. These are the people that he meant are unreasonable people, in my view, or the change makers. And I've been studying these kinds of people probably for about 20 years. I'm fascinated by what makes successful people tick, how they think, how they work, how they operate, etc. And I've come to certain conclusions about them, and I'd like to share some of these conclusions with you about what we call unreasonable people. Oftentimes, unreasonable people are not very remarkable when we first meet them, except, well, obviously, the way they think. And one of the people actually I had the privilege of listening to a couple of years ago in a conference was Bill Gates. And I admire Bill Gates, and what I'm about to say is not disrespectful to him in any way, but he's kind of not remarkable when you meet him. He's not very charming. He's not the best speaker, right? He's pretty ordinary actually, except in the way he thinks, except what's here. And now what I love about Bill Gates is that he allowed himself to think big. He didn't ask anyone's permission. He didn't want anyone's validation. He decided to think big. In 1980, Microsoft, the company he co-founded, set a big goal, or a BHAG as we say in big business, a big, hairy, audacious goal. They said a computer on every desk in every home. In 1980, this was a revolutionary thought because they weren't as common as they are now, computers. People still use typewriters. I remember when I was in school 5 years ago, we still used typewriters. Yeah, so typewriters were popular. This was something revolutionary at the time. He set this goal with his group. We're going to make this happen. And by the year 2000, they made it happen, at least in the developed world. Unreasonable thinkers think big. They allow themselves. They don't need anyone's validation or permission. And in the process, he made himself the wealthiest man in the world. And today, he's still thinking big. He's solving billion people problems. He's trying to eradicate disease, solve problems that affect hundreds of millions of people and billions of people. Unreasonable people think big and give themselves permission to think as such. In 1902, a young Saudi prince, at the age of 26, believed he could recapture his ancient homeland or his home capital of Riyadh from his enemies. He thought he could, and he did. Not just that, in the process, he built a country. It took him 30 years, but he created what is today called the third Saudi state. Starts here, thinking big. In fact, today, we see his grandson, Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS, trying to do the same, revolutionizing or re-revolutionizing Saudi Arabia in creating what many people are calling the fourth Saudi state. Think big. Unreasonable people have tremendous discipline. It's all fine and good to think big, but it's about the implementation. It's about having the discipline. And the change makers, the unreasonable people, know that you must have the discipline. One without the other does not work. And this is one of my favorite unreasonable people growing up. Some of you might remember this man. So it is said that Bruce Lee trained 6 hours a day. He did 2,000 punches a day and 500 kicks a day, and this is notwithstanding the energy he put into filmmaking. I used to own a martial arts school. I didn't do 500 kicks a day. And I don't think I did 500 kicks a week. Maybe I did 500 kicks a month, I'm not sure. There is a reason why this man revolutionized entertainment and the whole martial arts industry. Discipline. Discipline. Unreasonable people have that discipline that very, very few people have. Unreasonable people are relentless, yet infinitely patient. In 2015, my colleagues and I from the Bahrain Foundation for Dialogue had the privilege of going to South Africa. And we learned from members of the African National Congress, or the ANC, the party of Nelson Mandela. And we met with some of the change makers in South Africa, and we learned some valuable lessons. One of the lessons that we learned is that the ANC, they planned years ahead, decades ahead. They really understood patience and long-term thinking. They planned years and years and decades ahead. In fact, Nelson Mandela, as some of you probably know, he spent 27 years in prison. 27 years. During 18 years on Robben Island, one of the toughest prisons in South Africa at the time. During that time, he never gave up on his activism. He never, in prison, he would do his own way of subtle activism. Not just that, he urged his fellow prisoners. He said to them, learn Afrikaans, which is the language of the most white South Africans. He told them, learn the language. They refused. They said, why should we learn the language of the enemy? He said, in order to beat your enemy, you must understand your enemy. Learn their language, understand their culture, read their literature, read their poetry. And he convinced them, and they learned Afrikaans. To be someone like him, to be an activist, you really need to have that long-term thinking, long-term planning, and that kind of discipline that very, very few people around the world have. Unreasonable thinkers all have experienced failure and know that failure and success are two sides of the same coin. This is Lee Kuan Yew, the first Prime Minister of Singapore and considered the founding father of Singapore. When he came to office in 1958, he was convinced, he was absolutely convinced that the only way his small island nation could survive is if it merged with Malaysia. It had no natural resources, didn't have much of a defense force, and it was vulnerable. And he was very, very concerned about his people. And he knew, he believed, the only way for my country to survive if we merged what was then called Malaya. And this happened in 1963. His dream came through. They merged with Malaya, and it became Malaysia. A few other countries also came in. The S and the I, incidentally, in Malaysia is from Singapore. They merged in 1963, yet 2 years later, they separated again. And this was devastating for Lee Kuan Yew. It was his biggest failure. There was mistrust, there was politics, tension in the union, it just didn't work. And he gained an independent nation, but he was devastated. He was really distraught because he believed that the only way his country could survive is through merger. And here's what he said. He said, I'm going to read this out loud. He said, for me, it would be a moment of anguish. I mean, for me, it's a moment of anguish because all of my life, you see, all of my adult life, I have believed in merger and the unity of the two territories. And his heart was broken. In fact, when he came on TV to talk about this, he was crying. He was saying these words while he was crying. Yet, after 1965, he turned this failure, quote unquote, into a huge success and helped transform Singapore into the modern metropolis that it is today. He helped transform, he led the transformation from what is then called a third world country to a first world country. He did it in 30 years within one generation. All unreasonable thinkers know you cannot have the success without the failure. So, I want to leave a message to everyone here, especially to the young people. My message is that you too can be a change maker. All you have to do is change the way you think. Thank you. And welcome to the 2019 Falak Unreasonable Thinking Summit. It's the third year we're doing this. We're very, very excited. Falak Consulting is a values-based, purpose-driven strategy and innovation consultancy. This summit started with an idea back in 2016, and we're so delighted now that it's running for the third year straight, and we're bringing some of the most unreasonable thinkers from around the world to Bahrain for all of us to learn from them. This summit could not be made possible without the support of various organizations. And really, what I'm so proud of in this summit is that it's a true private-public partnership. It really is a group of people coming together to make it happen. It's not just Falak, it's really different organizations, different people making it happen. So I'd like to publicly acknowledge and thank those that made this event happen today. First, I'd like to thank His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa for his support. I'd like to thank him for a number of things. One, for being the patron today. Thank you, Bu Khalifa. The other thing is, he's been a supporter from day one behind the scenes. Oftentimes, I'd have to make a couple of calls before the event to make him move some things, make things happen behind the scenes. So, Bu Khalifa, thank you so much. Very much appreciated for your support. Yes, you can clap for him. I think you should. He deserves it. This event would not be possible without Tamkeen. And really, I think it is underestimated how much of a difference this organization is making to this country, how much of a difference it's making to the development of Bahraini youth. It really is the change maker organization in Bahrain. And what I love about Tamkeen is I love dealing with Dr. Ibrahim Janahi because he makes it easy. Every year I pitch the Unreasonable Thinking Summit to him again. I bring a small presentation on my iPad. I tell him, this is what we're doing. He said, okay, done. And I tried to convince him some more. He said, we're done, Suhail. Okay, good. What else do you need? No, he said, khalas, it's done. So the decision from opening my iPad to the decision to support the Unreasonable Thinking Summit is about maybe 34 seconds, 35 seconds. So, and he does this every year, and I think next year maybe we can do it in 10 seconds. Yeah. Dr. Ibrahim, thank you so much. Can we give him a big clap, please? I cannot thank you enough, and thank you to your team. Everyone has been so supportive, so helpful. Really, it's such an honor, really, and thank you to everyone that has been supporting us from the team. Thank you. That was someone from Tamkeen who started that clap. Also, a big appreciation and thanks to the Economic Development Board, to the, under the Startup Bahrain banner or brand. Really, they've been really supportive in this. And what I like about Startup Bahrain or the EDB, again, from day one. In fact, when we had this idea in 2016, I went to Khalid Rameh. Unfortunately, Khalid isn't here today, but I went to Khalid and I said to him, look, here's the idea. I had the idea. If you support it, we'll start from there, then Tamkeen, then we'll go to the private sector, we'll do it. And he said, it's a wonderful idea, let's do it. So really, my huge appreciation to EDB and Startup Bahrain. And in fact, the Unreasonable Thinking Summit is the first event of Startup Bahrain Week. So there's a whole week of events. I think something 60, 70 events. I don't even, Ahmed, how many are we? Something, nobody even knows. Dozens of events happening in Bahrain for a whole week. So you can go online and find out what else is happening there. Can I have a big thanks to the EDB for all of their support? Finally, before I hand over to our first Unreasonable Thinker and our patron, I'd like to thank our silver sponsors. We value their partnership and them helping us. First, Peninsula Farms, Peninsula Farms, this is the 2nd out of 3 years that they support us. Sheikh Rashid, thank you very much. My regards also to Sheikh Khalid and the whole team at Palm Capital. Thank you very much, sir. Also, yeah, go on. Banagas as well, my sincere thanks to them. 2nd year that they are supporting us. I know Dr. Sheikh Muhammad couldn't make it today, but I really, really appreciate their support. So can we have a round of applause for Banagas as well? Thank you. And of course, Babco, the 3rd year. I think the other than our main sponsor, the only other player who's been sponsoring us for 3 years in a row. So many thanks to Babco, and again, to Sheikh Muhammad. Can we give them a big, big round of applause? Thank you. Again, my thanks to GPIC for their support. And GPIC was one of those when I met Dr. Abdurrahman Jawahri, from pitching to check in hand, we're talking about less than 24 hours. So big thanks to GPIC. Thank you very much. Also, Kuwait Finance House, thank you very much for your support. I believe Abdul Hakim is not here today, but my thanks to him and to the team for your support. And if you can pass him my regards, I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. And yeah, go on. And finally, my thanks to Khaliji Commercial Bank. Thank you to my cousin, who's more like my brother, Sattam Algosaibi. Thank you for your support. Okay, I think we're now, yes, a couple of more people to thank. Mevento Creative Hub is the creative and event management company, our partners for 3 years in a row. They've been up all night putting all this together. They've been putting the stage together. They've been working on this for weeks and weeks to make this all come true. So can the volunteers working, put up your hand, make yourself known, and the Mevento team, can you put your hands up? Can we give those guys a big hand of applause for all their efforts? Thank you. They've been up all night, so I think they're buzzed on caffeine. If you see them a little bit shaky, you know why. And of course, I'd like to thank the Falak team, our Falakonians, really. We work somewhere between 9 to 10 months from Unreasonable Thinking Summit to Unreasonable Thinking Summit. We really work very hard on making this happen. Can I ask my team to stand up, please? Make yourself known. And yes, go on, stand up wherever you are. Thank you very much, guys, for your efforts. Good. So a couple of housekeeping issues before we move on. We would like to make this as punctual as possible. Now, these things are not easy. Getting 300 people in and out of a room is not the easiest thing to do, but we'll try to be punctual. Please help us in being punctual. If I ask you to be here at a certain time, please be back in the room at a certain time. There's always that one guy. When we start going in, he goes out and gets his coffee. Don't be that one guy, all right? So when we say come back, we all come back together, please. Let's try and start together on time. The hashtag is Falak UTS. UTS stands for Unreasonable Thinking Summit. This is the hashtag. Use it and use it generously, please. For all of those that didn't make it, let's make them jealous that they couldn't be here today. And finally, we have breakouts tomorrow at 11:30. The registration for the breakouts is today at lunchtime, correct? So decide at lunchtime which breakout you are going to go to. See one of the team members here and register for that. We'll have the speakers also tomorrow talk about what their breakouts will be. Where can people find out the topics of the breakout? Okay, there's registration booths. They can find out there. And you wanted me to talk about the feedback forms. Okay, so at the end of the day, guys, your thingamajigs have thank you, your badges have QR codes. You're going to use a QR code to put your feedback about this. We would love to hear your feedback about everything that's going on. So this is some of the housekeeping issues. And finally, I'd like to hand over to our patron, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Khalifa, for his opening remarks. فليتفضل.